everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of GenAI Vlog. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to build a Lambda function that directly invoke the Textract OCR service on AWS platform. So it's going to be a quick episode, lots of hands-on tools, lots of experience building here. And with that being said, let's turn our attention to the screen. So right in front of me, I'm logged into my AWS account and I am in the Lambda service, right? So it allows me to build serverless function, and that's where we are right now. So first things first, we're going to create a function, and then we're going to do it from scratch. I'm going to give it a name. For the simplicity, I'm going to call it my Textract v2, and I'm going to use Python. So the latest Python should be fine. And this row here, I'm going to create a new row. So I click on that checkbox, and that is going to be for this particular function only, because later on, I'm going to have to change the inline policy. So that's why I want to create a new row that goes with this Lambda function. So that's pretty much it. Let's say create a function. This is going to take a second. It's going to create a function for us using Python template. Okay, so once we create this function, let's scroll down. This body is the main script, lambda function.py. So we're going to obviously update that. I already have it pasted here. This is the body of the script. Don't worry about it. I'm going to leave the GitHub repo of the tutorial in the bottom of this video. So once you have this saved, obviously you want to deploy. So Control-Shift-U. If you're on Windows, if you're on MacBook, it's a Shift-Command-U. To deploy this, once you deploy it, you can, of course, test out the event here by setting up a new event. I'm going to skip this part because I already tested this function. I know it works. Let me walk you guys through it. So set up the logging. So this way you can track the errors. And then we're not going to use anything except for Bolo 3 and Bolo Core. This is the two main packages that we're going to use. And we're going to be using Textract. So that's the main service we're going to use. That's how we set up the client. And then in the Lambda handler, which is the main component of the function, we're going to check the body, right? If the body is not in there, obviously, we're not even going to try to make the API call. If body is in there, let's grab the body, and then let's try to make the API call. So it requires an image, right? An image is processed using base64. So that's what these two lines of code is doing here. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to fail it gracefully. Or you can, of course, use S3 bucket, but in this tutorial, we're going to use the image directly in the API call. Also, once you have the image, you can then, of course, basically call the client, right? So Textract client, call the client, right? Detect document text, you send in the image, whatever response that you get back, that's going to be what you receive. So you want to report that, log it, and that goes into the JSON dumps of the body, of the dictionary, of the object that you return. If it's not that, then you let it fail gracefully with 400 error code or 500 error code, depending on the situation. Boom, there you go. That's pretty much done. We then need to do a couple of things before this can go live. Number one is we need to go to configuration. We need to change the timeout. So most likely it'll be longer than 3 seconds. For simplicity, I'm going to do 2 minutes, just like that. And then I'm going to say save. And then I need to go to permission. This is when it gets a little bit tricky. I need to go to the role. This is the IAM role attached to the Lambda function. So the way I like to do it is I usually save the inline policy as a custom policy. So I say create inline policy. I'm going to say JSON. And I'm going to obviously copy paste the code here. And this means that I am allowed to call the Textract detect document text service. So once that's pasted in there, say next. And we're going to create a name. In this particular case, we're going to say my Textract policy for Lambda. Okay, so once that's done, we say create a policy. Boom, just like that. There you go. You can verify by expanding it, and then you can verify the JSON inline text to make sure that the policy is edited correctly. So once that's there, this IAM role should be all set. Once that's all set, we can then go to add trigger. So in this case, we are going to use API gateway. And to make our life easier, we're just going to create a new API, and then we're going to use a REST API. And I'm going to open up a security so anybody can invoke it. These additional settings, I'm just going to leave as it is for simplicity. So I say add. This is going to attach an API to this lambda function as an invoke method. So I click on this API gateway. It's going to tell me that's the trigger. Click on that. It will take me to where that API is. So here, obviously, you can go to test, and then you can have a test body here. So if you want to request here, this request body obviously need to be a base 64, which I'm not going to do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. I'm going to pick a new name called dev, and then I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. This will give me an invoke URL. So by clicking the post method, boom, just like that, that's my invoke URL. So I'm going to grab that URL, and now I'm going to go to a Python notebook to see if this can work. So now I'm in Jupyter Notebook on Colab, and what I'm going to do is make this URL available so I know what to look for. So this is a text, that's my URL, and I'm going to leave that there. And then what needs to happen is I need an invoke script. So this is a Textract, right? So I need some sort of function to process image. So here's a function here that takes a path and give me some sort of base 64 string. So in order to do that, I need to upload an image. So I just uploaded an image. If you click in there, you can see that it's an insurance policy. This is obviously from some sort of a picture or some sort of a scan, right? These are handwritten digits. So it'd be pretty amazing if you can have an algorithm detect what these letters are. Great. So let's run that function. So we have this in the back end. And what needs to happen is I need to invoke this to create the base 64 format of the image. So this name I need to change to false insurance policy.jpg. And if I run it, you will see that it created this base 64 format of image, and you type it out, the class of this object is string. Good. Now we have this image being converted correctly. Now we need to invoke that API. So here I have a function that is essentially a request from Python built-in package. And we have some sort of header, response, things like that. And then we're going to make an API call. So now this helper function is in the backend. Let's invoke it. The first thing I need is, of course, URL. And recall that in the beginning, I saved this URL on top here. So I'm going to paste it in here. And the rest is easy. I'm going to paste the payload here, and I'm going to make an API call. I'm run it just like that. And I can show you the result dictionary by doing the keys method. You can see there are a bunch of blocks inside, and you want to check out the length of those blocks. And together they are 269. So you know there are a bunch of stuff in there, right? So for example, you can do bracket 0 that give you the first item. You can of course do other numbers such as bracket 1, and that give you a text and as long as the bounding box. So now we're talking. Now the information is out of the picture, and we can probably plot it. So plotting it means I need a helper function that goes into these blocks, get the items one by one, and take these text and use a bounding box as anchor to draw the text onto the location where that belongs. So I put the function here just like that. Let's run it. And let me invoke this function along with this image object to show you what the output look like. Boom, just like that. You get the idea, right? Now we have an end-to-end solution to read the text from the image and then to carry on the next step of the procedure. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like.